Yo, he looks sick!
Wait a minute.
Run! Ugh.
I love Godzilla. I love kaijus. And I love big, dumb action sequences. So when you tell me that you have a movie that has Godzilla and a bunch of kaijus and a bunch of cool fight scenes, then that, for me, should be a 10 out of 10 movie, no notes. Yet what I received was a boring family melodrama. But instead of an abusive stepdad, we got Godzilla, and a British guy, and a crazy mom who has the dumbest evil plan I've ever heard of in a movie. Ever.
Tell me, what exactly did Mummy sell you on? Some grand utopia? Man and monster living together in blissful harmony?
But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was rewatching some Godzilla stuff, and I remembered that I actually never got back to the series for another retrospective. And I figured, I should probably get back on that. I mean, a new Godzilla is probably right around the corner, right? Right? Oh snap, it is. Okay, now's a good time as any to take a fresh look at the movie Godzilla 2, Electric Boogaloo, and see how it's held up after a couple more movies in the MonsterVerse have released.
But before we get into that, hey, I'm Attaboy, and this is the Attaboy Show. If you like what I do, or just like hearing me talk, why not subscribe and ring that notification bell so YouTube will tell you when I upload new videos. Thanks for your support. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. I'll see you later.
This is, weirdly enough, probably the most ambitious film in the entire MonsterVerse, and yes, I will die on that very electrified, oddly Christian-themed hill. And considering this whole universe is made up of movies about giant lizards and sometimes monkeys duking it out, that's a pretty impressive thing. Not only that, but this movie definitely had the most potential, since it tries to incorporate more of the Japanese monsters and revamp their histories, really trying to bridge the gap between Western and Eastern iterations of the Big G. Does it live up to that ambition, though?
Ghidorah.
I'm going to say no. Okay, when this movie first came out, let me tell you, I actually really liked it. I saw it in the theaters way back when, and the fights were crazy. You see, younger me's brain hadn't yet been TikTokified all the way through yet, and I could actually sit through a movie with slow parts in it. So it didn't register to me when I walked out of the theater that 2 hours and 30 minutes had passed. This movie, sitting at around 2 hours and 12 minutes, is definitely the longest Godzilla movie. Or really, any movie in the MonsterVerse. And it shows. Okay, technically, Godzilla, you know, the American one from like the 90s, that one is a little bit longer, but like that one doesn't count, so we're not gonna talk about it. I guess it makes sense I never went back to watch it before now, since on this rewatch, I was just sitting there, blankly staring at the screen, waiting for anything to happen. Sure, there's some monster stuff up front, but weirdly enough, this movie kind of takes cues from the first movie, which I complained about in its review as well. Check that out if you haven't seen it. Where the monsters don't do much until like 40 minutes into the movie. Guys, have we learned nothing from the previous movie's reception? You can't keep people from the monsters.
The movie is about the monsters, come on!
But hey, this movie does get some stuff right, which we'll get into later. I don't know, we'll see. Look, I get it. Monster movies are tough to find the balance between serious melodrama and the inherent schlock that comes from the main conflict in the movie being from, you know, giant lizards duking it out. The first film kind of had this issue too, though, where the first half was taken incredibly seriously. And then this goober shows up to be the main character and the movie kind of falls apart. In this movie, our main character doesn't get replaced so unceremoniously. Or do they? Honestly, I have no idea who's supposed to be the main character. Like, is it the dad? The mom? The kid? Serizawa? The lady scientist that's always with Serizawa? Ooh, it's not her. Or maybe it's even Rick, with how much love he gets.
I record everything, man. Everything.
Rick, what the heck, dude? That's such a weird thing to say. Why would you say that? So if the previous movie felt a little at odds with itself, this movie has one foot in Serious Town and the other 30 miles away in Weenie Hut General. The beginning of this movie is actually kind of dark, both in tone and lighting. Like, some seriously messed up stuff happens that kind of pushes the PG-13 rating to the limit. I was visibly aghast when I saw this team of scientists get brutally wiped out in front of the other characters. I mean, we only see a few deaths, like, directly, but something about hearing people get gunned down 20 feet away from this scared little girl, who, at this point, we were under the impression that she didn't know what was going on, since, for some reason, the movie tries to portray her as a victim of this evil guy for the first hour or so, but again, we'll get to that. This scene kind of stayed with me as pretty uncharacteristically gruesome for the franchise, but then every character is quipping like their lives depend on it.
Thank you for the 5th grade history lesson, Mr. Coleman.
It's not just Rick either, as much as I hate him.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's bring him in for a beer. You out of your goddamn mind?
Rick, please stop talking. Literally everyone is saying the dumbest one-liners, zingers, jokes, and the most unhinged things possible, as if this weren't like the actual end times for humanity.
Has he been working out?
You kidding me? Sarazawa's got that lizard juiced.
Looks Egyptian.
2 of you for parents? I'd run away from home too.
Home.
Something I've come to realize after watching these movies, mixing super dark stuff and silly stuff only makes the silly stuff sillier and the darker stuff also somehow sillier. And that is not a good thing. I'm just saying, it makes sense why the rest of the series just opted to take big funny lizard fights other large animals in a more fun and ridiculous direction than whatever edgy 16-year-old 4chaner came up with some of the scenes in this movie. As the movie progresses though, it kind of just drops all the seriousness, for better or for worse. I think it's for the better, personally. And kind of embraces that, yeah, we're watching a silly monster movie where dumb, inexplicable stuff happens on the regular. I don't know, it feels like they swung in both directions a bit too hard, and the characters don't really help things by being in the movie. The characters. Oh man, the characters. You know, I am not a fan of when people say that for these type of movies, they should just ditch the human characters and have Godzilla be the center of action for the entire length of the movie. I mean, we kind of already got those, and they are called YouTube compilations. But this movie might be the best argument for that yet. They're somehow both incredibly bland and yet never stop talking.
Subterranean tunnel system that connects the entire planet. Doesn't matter. I knew I was right. I told you.
Rick, be quiet, man. Characters constantly talk about stuff that they should realistically have no real way of knowing as if it were fact, and some of these guys are straight up immortal. Like, dang, this dude should have died 10 times over in this movie. This movie also took a look at the first one and somehow decided the characters in that movie had too much personality, since in this one, everyone other than Rick is basically a plank of wood. But this time, it's way worse because the military isn't even unintentionally hilarious, they're just kinda bland too. It's funny, they get some of the original actors from the first movie here, like Ken, let them go to group therapy and hash out their issues peacefully, Watanabe, and his assistant, who both die in the movie. In a move taken straight out of the previous film, they take the only good and likable characters who we're rooting for, and actually have some decent line delivery, and kill them off. All in a bid to try and make the awful characters of this movie shine. Trust me, we'll get to how dumb that is later. First, we should talk about the guy who's probably the main character, John King of Monsters. I actually don't remember what his name was, but he looks like a John, right? Anyway, this guy is everything wrong with this movie. If any of the actors seem like they do not want to be in this movie, this guy seems like his brain is somewhere else entirely. He's the father of, girl, and I guess he's supposed to be the emotional anchor to her, but I don't think there's a single line he delivers with any kind of emotion. Look right here! He's trying to find his daughter in the middle of all this chaos, and this is how he sounds.
Where's Madison?
I don't know. I thought she was there.
Well, she's not there.
It's honestly pretty crazy that they didn't get more takes for these line deliveries. Anyway, he's the evil lady's ex-husband, I guess. And he studies wolves because he thinks like a 14-year-old, and I guess he finds them cool. He and his ex-wife were developing this tool called the Orca to control the Titans, but they could never figure it out. So then the first movie happens, and their son dies, so they kind of just stop working on it, I guess? Anyway, they kind of separate, and he goes to study wolves, but he's not very good at it, though, since he believes in debunked science.
As amazing as this sounds, they're moving like a pack. They're hunting. All packs, from wolves to killer whales, they all respond directly to an alpha. And this Ghidorah is the new alpha, and all the other creatures are just doing his bidding.
Oh yeah, did I mention the entire premise of this movie is based on faulty animal science? Which, you know, wouldn't even be an issue except for the fact that the main character is supposed to be a wolf expert. The whole movie revolves around the idea that these kaijus follow the same behavioral patterns as wolves in that they have an alpha that leads the pack, and this alpha decides how the pack behaves. Obviously, the alpha is supposed to be Godzilla, but King Ghidorah being, alive makes this difficult. So naturally, the movie scientists surmise the two must fight until one is dead. Except, my fine viewer, this isn't some sketchy podcast hosted on a website for dude bro supplements that'll totally give you abs. They don't work, trust me, I tried. Do not do this, okay? This is real life, and in real life, wolves do not behave like this. Study after study has debunked the myth of the alpha male. And to see this movie unironically have a supposed expert on wolves parrot this nonsense is kinda hilarious now that I think about it. So you got this guy and his wife who are such good animal experts and somehow also genius engineers who can make a device that emulates the call of the kaijus to calm them down or make them angry, which means now we get to talk about the evil lady's plan. Yay. Honestly, it's pretty tough to mess up an evil plan for a monster movie. I mean, you get an evil scientist or whatever, and I don't know, he goes, hey, this big monster is bad, and I should use it to do bad things. But this guy and this lady, boy, let me tell you, I have no clue what the plan was here. So let me get this straight. Because her son died during the first movie, thanks to Godzilla and the Mutos, her plan was to, let me look at this, release all the monsters so they can fight for supremacy and annihilate countless other people who also have kids, similar to how her son died, so the natural order can be maintained. Or something. And the other evil guy who's helping her do this, he's like unironically a believer of this terrible idea. Somehow, I guess, by reducing humanity down to what's supposed to be very small numbers, the planet will like heal or something, even as giant monsters ravage the environment. Like, one of them even starts a volcano eruption that covers everything in ash. Which I don't need to tell you, but that's a bad thing for the environment, dude. Countless animals will die due to the ash cloud produced by this one event alone. And anyway, it doesn't even make sense to think that only a handful of humans will survive. Since, yeah, the monsters do a ton of damage, but don't actually kill all that many people, nor do they even seem interested in, eating them or whatever. Except for this one time, which was really weird. None of this even matters anyway, because it turns out Ghidorah is an alien, so not even part of the natural order or whatever. And now the evil lady's all up in a tizzy about what she's done, since Ghidorah seems a little bit angrier than all the other monsters. But the plan hasn't really changed in any meaningful way. In fact, I would say it's even better now, because Ghidorah seems like he'll actually accomplish the goals that they set out to do. And, maybe he could even provide some free energy. I mean, he's got a lot. He's got some to spare. So how do our scrappy team of protagonists try to stop it? Obviously by letting Godzilla fight that guy as much as possible. Yeah, everyone's attitude towards Godzilla makes no sense. The main character is the only one who makes any sense, saying stuff like, you gotta kill all the monsters. Yeah, he's objectively right. I mean, have you guys seen what Godzilla does to the cities and the countless number of lives that are lost because of him? At the risk of sounding like an anti-kaiju bigot, the monsters are the bad guys! Yeah, we as the audience know that Godzilla is, actually, we only know that Godzilla is cool. Not really sure if we know he's a good guy or not. Same with Mothra. She does not look like a good monster in her first appearance. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh yeah, Mothra is awake, finally. How do you guys know she's not just gonna join the rest of the monsters causing untold destruction across the world? Also, everyone in the scene kind of looks like they admire her beauty, and yeah, she looks great. But let me tell you, if a giant freaking moth the size of a building showed up, I'd react more like this.
Monster.
Guys, I can't even handle a bug this big. And you're telling me that they come in building size? And these guys are just like, wow, she's so pretty. She's got death mandibles the size of trucks. Guys, please. This was kind of funny in the last movie, as I pointed out in my previous video, where the news runs a banner saying, Godzilla? Good guy? Oh my gosh? But this movie takes it even farther by just kind of assuming Godzilla's got humanity's back, even though all of his actions seem pretty neutral at best and purposely aloof at worst. Look at this tail thing he does. There's really no reason to do it. And if this were real life, these people's boat would have capsized and they would all be dead. This movie does do a good job at keeping the stakes high though, even if nothing feels like it can, kill any of our main characters. Godzilla shows up to where Ghidorah is playing Fetty Wap on his JBL speaker and immediately gets his butt handed to him. So it really does a good job at portraying how powerful this new villainous lizard is. It was pretty cool to make Ghidorah the main antagonist monster here. His powers are rendered really well, and the scale of these fights are pretty cool. While I do miss the more grounded view of fights, similar to the first movie, I'm not sure it would work too well with the sheer amount of just stuff happening. These fights contain pretty good angles and destruction is really cool, so I gotta give the movie that. But after this initial fight, the rest of the plot just kind of falls over itself trying to justify what happens. So the plan is, since Godzilla gets straight up diffed by Ghidorah and a giant bomb that the military drops on both the fighting kaijus, Godzilla pieces out and goes into hibernation, trying to absorb radiation to, I don't know, get a rematch in 100 years or something. So instead of waiting for that, the research and military team we've been following decide that they're just gonna nuke the lizard. Yes, you heard me right. They're going to nuke the lizard. Do they have a nuke conveniently on hand? Yes, somehow. Do they have a robot who could autonomously deliver this tiny nuke? No, they don't. They have to do it by hand. By Ken Watanabe's hands. Literally surrounded by soldiers who are experienced with this kind of thing. But no, it's the scientist that's gotta do it. The leading scientist that is pretty much the only one who knows anything about these creatures that are now rampaging all around the world. Smart! Calling his death preventable would be an understatement. He was gunning for the grave as soon as the movie began. And so he kind of just sacrifices himself, even though, I don't know, it looked like there was definitely a better way to do this thing in particular. Like, they set the timer. They could have just set the time to, like, I don't know, like a day or something, or a couple hours. I mean, the ship even gets caught in the blast, so I'm not really sure what was going on here. And after all this, he gives his notes to not his assistant, because again, she got eaten, but the main guy, Johnny. I think my main issue here is that none of the characters are thinking straight. They act as if they're like plot-driven robots, just going through the motions in the most obnoxious way possible. This death was supposed to be heavy, and hey, I like Serizawa, but it all felt so pointless? Maybe it's on me being surprised by how callously the movie throws the good characters away. Not like that's ever happened before. So, going back to what I was saying before, they nuke Godzilla. Godzilla then fights Ghidorah, Mothra shows up and dies immediately, and then Godzilla turns into Burning Godzilla and blows both the mother and Ghidorah into smithereens. If I sound a little bored, it's because at this point, the movie has been dragging for a long time. With the tone all over the place, the action being good but spaced by these really slow and ridiculous moments.
They're stuck!
Shut up, Rick.
The action just kind of glasses over and you start to get kaiju fatigue or something. A better script would have definitely helped, I think. The human conflict is just so unnecessarily unendearing. There's also the news playing everywhere, all the time. Like in a room full of people, okay, I get it, it makes sense. But here, this room is literally empty. I don't know why it would be blasting the news, other than, for the audience. I think if the writing was just a bit sharper, and the characters just a bit cooler, and actually, characters, this movie could have been really enjoyable. But as it stands, it's a bit thin, and yet bloated at the same time. I feel like it's really missing an emotional human message to the action. And this is an issue that you can kind of pick up on, like even the actors didn't know what the message was going to be, because when the main character was asked about it, he said that the movie's message was about healing the planet. Like, no dude, it definitely was not. What about any of this is healing? It has nothing to do with that. It was only about monsters fighting each other. And that's pretty much it. The tagline to the movie is even, let them fight. Okay. That's all the bad. But what about the good? There's a ton of callbacks, and I probably missed all of them. Like, I was watching this scene, and there's this scientist who's on the ship here, traveling to where Godzilla is, and then in the next scene, she's suddenly over here by Mothra? I remember thinking, what? How'd she do that? But apparently, it's a callback to the movies that have Mothra in them, in which these two fairies are like recurring characters, and here they're represented by a set of twins. Great. Confusing in this movie, but great. The visuals are actually top-notch. I really loved all the monster fights, and Ghidorah was pretty sick. Every time he was on screen, I was actually intimidated. And when he gets wrecked, it's pretty cool to see when he tries to come back, too. Dude is relentless. There's also this one scene where Ghidorah is posing in front of the cross, which was neat. I think the movie is trying to tell me something, but I have no clue what it is. But hey, it looks cool. Burning Godzilla was amazing as well, but like, dang, the mom character died a horrible death. That does not look fun. Okay, I think I've talked about this movie enough. I just recommend watching all the fight scenes on YouTube. And you know what? Maybe skip this one next time. Well, that's all for this episode of The Attaboy Show. Tune in next time where I'm going to lock myself in a cage with a giant monkey.